Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. You'll notice this week I'm in a different location, as I mentioned on last week's episode. I've ended up in Munich this week, so you'll join me in my random adventures and random hotels and random internet connections for the next 2 weeks. But we're in Munich, and most importantly, this is the episode I've been waiting for a long time. This is the episode you've been waiting for a long time, so I hope you enjoy this episode, because it's probably one which has been a bit too long overdue. It's finally the one where we can review a Pato O'Ward race win for the first time in too long. We're not counting St. Petersburg because that wasn't a win, because Newgarden would have won it anyway, let's be completely honest here. So we finally have an O'Ward win to actually review, and it was a bit of a slow burner, but we ended up with quite a nail-biting finish, and we ended up with, I think, quite an important O'Ward win in many different aspects, the championship, his own confidence, and for McLaren's result. So a very exciting win for me personally, but in the overall context of the championship and various other things, I think it's quite an important win in many aspects.
Yeah, so we're recording on Monday night. You've been you are in Munich, Dan. I've been at Silverstone all weekend. So Monday has basically been qualifying day and race day for me, because since Friday practice, I've kind of not been able to catch anything. I was on the lookout all weekend for IndyCar stuff. I saw someone wearing, you would be happy to know, a Pato shirt. I saw a DHL cap, number 28. I don't know whether it was Grosjean or Hunter Race, so that's TBC. And there was also a weird glitch where the commentary, the sort of subtitles for the on-track commentary on the trackside screens, every time the commentator said tyre, the subtitles basically read Theo Pourchaire. So there was a lot of chatter about intermediate Theo Pourchaires over the weekend. So that was amusing. But no, I'm all caught up now, and yeah, it was a bit of a slow burner, as you say, but it really kind of came to life as the race progressed. And for Pato, it is a very, very large victory, really. I mean, he started on the front row for the first time since sort of back end of last year in Nashville. It was only his third Fast Six appearance on the Ronin Street Course all season, actually, which is kind of surprising, because he ended last year pretty well in that regard. But no, I mean, he kind of seemed for the first part of the race just in no man's land, really, in second, and then kind of just bided his time. Really started attacking Palou. I think he felt he was a lot better on the red tyres than Palou, who he said when Palou was on the primary tyres, it's the difference between the Ganassi and everyone else is stratospheric, apparently. But no, I think really during that final pit stop round, he basically just gained and gained ahead of it, and that kind of won him the race ultimately when Palou had a bit of a bobble in the pit stop, which, people are saying, oh, right, that's maybe what lost Palou the race. I think he kind of went into first gear a little bit too early. But O'Ward also had an issue on his first pit stop. He had to wait for, I think, Malukas to come into his pit box. So it kind of evens itself out. And ultimately, yeah, O'Ward, kind of that mid-race period where he really kind of gained on Palou, won him the race. And he stayed calm towards the end. There was kind of issues with back markers, slow cars. Dirty air was a bit of a problem, I must say, there. It was a bit of a concern that the leading cars couldn't pass the cars kind of at the back end of the lead lap. But yeah, it was a pretty dramatic end. Palou closed up, but O'Ward got the job done nearly 2 years on from his and the team's last taking of the checkered flag.
It's bizarre to say that, isn't it? St. Petersburg feels like such a non-win. I think you obviously mentioned it himself, and I think it's sort of important for him to get this sort of win, because St. Petersburg, realistically, yes, on paper, he'll go down as the victor, but in every other aspect, he wasn't the victor. So I feel like this felt quite important for him in the sense that he needed an actual victory to sort of solidify himself. And look, we look at the championship, and he's voted himself from 6th to 3rd, and we'll obviously get onto that in a minute. But I rarely said this is the most confident I felt over an O'Ward victory in a very, very long time, and actually came true for once. It was actually, if you didn't catch it, the closest qualifying since the introduction of the Firestone Fast 6. It was 0.0024 seconds. So it was one of the closest qualifyings of all time between O'Ward and you can't deny they were both a class of the field all weekend. They were very strong in practice, both, and they were trading blows in each practice session. They were the top 2 in qualifying by 2000s, and they were quite easily the runaways in the race. They were 15 seconds ahead of Scott McLaughlin, who ended in 3rd place. So, yeah, they were just dominant, weren't they? They were the runaway 2 by quite some margin. You've got to give a lot of credit to Palou. He's once again proved why he is so good at this. And the thing about Palou is it wasn't his day today, but he's just so great at picking up these results consistently. You look at Power, and I know Dixon's obviously a bit different on this occasion, but Palou is so good at getting these results week in, week out, which maybe none of his competitors do, which is why he's such a force to be reckoned with in the context of the championship. And he's got a lead now, which is looking at 40-ish something points. He's got almost a race win above Power now. He's quite comfortable in that. Palou could have won it today. I say today was yesterday, but there were half chances which you maybe feel, if it was the other way around, if it was O'Ward in second, he might have made that move. But Palou's, we've never seen him one to take risks. He's always been really composed, and once again, he obviously proved that. And a first or a second isn't probably going to change the outcome of his championship. For O'Ward, it's obviously a lot more significant getting that win compared to the second. So Palou played the numbers game today. Well, I keep saying today, but Palou played the numbers game, and he got a very solid result at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was going to say towards the end it was very, not necessarily stressful, but you could see kind of the last couple of laps. Palou was kind of like pushing for it. Towards the end he was really, really trying to go for it. He had a few moments where it was a bit nervous to kind of see. It kind of looked like he could have lost control, and he didn't. He kind of kept it under control, and he managed to just stay behind and kind of pull behind, and to kind of keep that gap after all the little wobbles that he had, I think is really good as well, just on his half.
Yeah, I think it's actually important to note as well that this is the first non-Penske Ganassi winner on track. Probably, unless I'm forgetting anything, since Toronto last year when Lundgaard won. So that's significant in itself. Toronto, or was Nashville since Toronto?
We're going to have to look at this, I think.
Which came first?
They keep changing the order, don't they? So it was really confusing. I think it was Nashville, because Toronto was off that run.
It will have been Nashville, because it was when Lundqvist was in the Meyer Shank. So yeah, that was the last non-Penske Ganassi winner when Kirkwood won in Nashville. But no, I think just to touch on Palou, this was the second successive race he came into with just a bulletproof 100% podium record. I think he'd stood on every step at Mid-Ohio. So like Laguna Seca, it was another track that he kind of excels at. I mean, it feels weird to say that because he kind of mutes.
It is Ganassi days, what anyone makes clear, because he didn't quite reach the podium with Coyne, unsurprisingly, and quite fairly enough.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, it kind of again started with, well, he's taken back-to-back poles for, I assume, the first time in his career. I mean, it's his third of the season. He came into this season with only 3 poles. So if he wasn't already good enough as a 2-time champion, he's really kind of knuckled down and perfected near enough his 1-lap speed. He's doubled his tally that he came into the year with. So it kind of feels like he's just got everything in his arsenal now. And yeah, it was a tight margin, but I think early part of the race, he looked kind of untouchable. I think that was the word that was used by Townsend Bell in commentary, and it was pretty commanding. And then it just kind of all fell down a little bit in that pit sequence. Obviously, I think he kind of had a little bit of traffic on his way in, and then had that issue in the pit stop, which was his own error as he tried to engage first gear a bit too early. So yeah, he did look unbeatable at points, but ultimately O'Ward did a better job. I mean, could Palou have done more to go for it and pass O'Ward? Maybe, but there were actually times, to be fair, where he was dropping wheels anyway in that dirty air. His tyres were maybe wearing a little bit if he was pushing too hard. And ultimately, I think he said, "Well, I'm not thinking of points. It's disappointing at this point." However, he must have had the championship in the back of his mind, because there's no need to risk loads when you have that margin at the front. And yeah, it was it was so close at the end, and yeah, maybe he was a little bit cautious, but ultimately it's a massive day for Palou. He's made real gains on Will Power, who finished down in 11th, I think, and then Scott Dixon, who we will get onto imminently, having a hybrid issue at the start. Yeah, I think it was one of the races that we really earmarked as being one where Palou had to kind of oust his championship rivals by this sort of margin heading into the oval swing. And it's maybe not a win, but he preserves that 100% Mid-Ohio podium record with Ganassi and really extends his championship lead.
It was quite a different race for both Palou and O'Ward, because I was so used to O'Ward sort of being the aggressor, the one who's making the moves, the one who's putting people under pressure, whilst Palou was so used to the one controlling the race, commanding the positions and making all the defensive work. It was almost a roles reversal of that on this occasion. O'Ward was the one having to do the nail-biting defending for the last 20 laps, which, again, we're not really used to seeing him doing, whilst Palou had to be the aggressor for the last 20 laps, which, again, isn't something we're really used to him doing. And I feel both have to be given a lot of credit. Palou didn't play the numbers game, as I said, which is the most important thing. And O'Ward, as I said, he's all mentioned all 5 of 6 of his wins set to work. Well, St. Petersburg and Iowa don't really count, but all the other ones he's sort of been the aggressor making moves in the last few laps. This really didn't feel like that. He didn't make the pass on track, but he still had to do quite a lot of defending. And he was helped by the fact Mid-Ohio was very difficult to overtake, but he did an absolutely superb job at defending from Palou, because it looked like so many times Palou would get him. And obviously, we had the whole traffic. Benjamin Pedersen became everyone's enemy at this track last year, if you remember correctly, by holding absolutely everybody up. Kevin Simpson might have been that enemy. You thought maybe he'll just get out of the way, just to not get involved. He didn't. He stayed where he was, and he's got every right to. I'm not planning of that at all. But I thought he might influence the outcome of the race. He didn't in the end, but it gave Pato O'Ward a few nervous moments to worry about. But obviously, he ended up all being fine. And the closest Mid-Ohio finish in 5 years has been quite well documented. And yeah, it feels very significant. In a lot of ways, especially for O'Ward. This win's been a long time coming, and it's felt like a win, to be honest, he's sort of quite needed. I am in my modelling era this week with a Pato victory. Of course, I had to rep Mr. O'Ward after a very big victory and a long-awaited victory. And of course, he wanted to pick up Pato O'Ward, but just like myself and many other drivers, let's say Alex Palou, Romain Grosjean, Joseph Newgarden, you can head to Formula Model Shop to get all the merchandise of your favourite drivers by visiting the Formula Model Shop website, the best place to get your merchandise in the UK, and of course, the rest of our European followers.
You can also look out for discounted items such as this Tom Blomqvist helmet, and you can use the discount code 5BOMB, or one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram account for a link to an exclusive VIP section on the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
$35.99 for that Blomqvist helmet, absolute steal. I've got one myself. Can't say, very good pickup, well made, nice helmet. And it's going to be a collector's item when Blomqvist disappears off the face of the earth and everyone forgets he's an IndyCar driver in 5 years' time. Obviously, if you want to read out all articles on the DIVEBOMB website, which of course you will be doing, you can head over to the pink banner on the homepage, which will take you straight to the Formula Model Shop website.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content. Yeah, I think it makes the drive all the more impressive as well that it went green all the way from the start. The start was delayed a couple of laps because of Dixon's car, breaking down on the pace laps. But there was no caution to kind of aid any of these drives that were occurring through the field that we'll get onto. But I think that kind of just added to it, and it was quite impressive, to be fair. I think during practice we'd had a few offs, nothing major. Mid-Ohio had been repaved, which we have discussed a little bit in the past. I think that was done back end of last year, so it wasn't quite as fresh as we saw at, say, Road America or Laguna Seca last year, where they were just treacherous if you kind of went offline. So it was a pretty clean race. And I guess that's why the start was a little bit more. It was a bit of a slow burner at that point. But yeah, I'll pose the question: was this O'Ward's best drive yet? Do you think?
Oh, that's tough. I feel like some of his Indy 500s have really got to be up there, as even though he's never won it. He's had a very good. But I feel like this is quite possibly the best race, and he's sort of shown an asset he's never really shown before. We haven't seen this defensive Pato O'Ward. We're so used to the feisty, overtaking, the aggressive Pato O'Ward, who at times he's been a bit too over-aggressive. And on this occasion, it was an opposite Pato O'Ward, which I think considering the circumstance, because let's not beat around the bush, Palou was quicker on the black tyre. O'Ward was obviously quick on the red tyre, but on that final stint where Palou was on the black, he was the quicker driver. So I think in that aspect, yes, you could certainly regard that as maybe one of O'Ward's best drives, if not the best. I think considering the season has had, if for him might quite easily be frustrating using the Indy 500 last lap, sort of getting that non-win at St. Petersburg and having a messy few races. I think you could quite well argue this is one of his best drives, considering the circumstances of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, to still be third in points as well, when we've kind of documented that his season's been... I mean, there's obviously been the 500, there's been St. Pete, but there haven't really been any heights, and there was a really rocky period at the start. So I think when you consider all of that as well, it just feels like a very significant day, and it was very much a more measured side to him that, it was a bit resemblant of Palou, for instance.
I think it was just nice as well. Like you said, he wasn't the one kind of attacking or so he wasn't the one on offense, but kind of when he kind of got up to the back markers and all the traffic, he didn't try and make a sort of move that would throw it away, in a sense. I don't know I can't remember if he was close enough to actually be able to overtake, but I think it just was nice to see him being calmer in the situation and try and not rush it just to get some more clean air and stuff like that. And I think it was just a really defensive drive from him.
So obviously the main talking point of the weekend was the introduction of the hybrid engine for the first time. Obviously learned a bit more details about it. Throughout the weekend, we sort of identified you could use it for basically 2-second bursts, giving you up to 200 extra horsepower. I think obviously taking over 800. Practice-wise, it was pretty smooth sailing. There's obviously the new feature where you could self-restart. That didn't really work for the first part of the weekend. I don't think it really worked Friday or Saturday morning. Whatever they did, they got it going. So the introduction was fairly smooth sailing. And then on the laps to the grid, we see Scott Dixon just stop at turn 5 as he rolls down the hill. We don't really know too well what happened. We understand it was a hybrid issue of some kind, but that is the issue where you bring it in mid-season, where obviously it's never going to be completely perfect. But on the first race of the hybrid, you've taken out a major championship contender as an immediately red flag, which is a bit of a shame, because otherwise the hybrid had a quite good introduction. If you ignore Dixon's incident, it wasn't like Grosjean got restarted himself during the race. There wasn't really any other major issues, at least at the top of my mind. It's a bit of a shame that the person affected was the person who is a championship contender.
Yeah, I think on the whole it was a successful weekend, to be honest. But, if this happened to, I'm not going to pick out a name, but if this happened to a driver kind of mid-pack, middle of the standings, not in leaders' circle trouble, not in contention for the championship, you'd kind of just brush over it and say, this is an inevitability. It's going to be put through things that it hasn't necessarily been put through before. In these early days, there are going to be things that maybe haven't cropped up before. I think we had a press conference last week with some Honda and Chevy personnel, and they kind of said that they expected surprises, positive or negative. But it's kind of just a disappointment, really, that it's these championship altering worries that we had will the mid-season introduction kind of alter the championship picture somewhat have kind of come to fruition. I think the issue Dixon said was basically the battery just drained completely. I mean, it's just basically worst case scenario that someone in the thick of the battle at the top was to kind of suffer one of these issues, and the repercussions are significant because we were talking about it being the cutaway 3 in the championship, and Dixon's now fallen a place to O'Ward, who was in 6th, and he was quite a distance behind, and now all of a sudden Dixon's 70-80 points back from the championship lead. It's just unfortunate. It was something that hadn't been seen before, I don't think, and maybe there is an argument. Well, whenever it's introduced, one of these issues could happen, and what if Dixon say it was introduced at St. Pete and Dixon has the same issue, you could still be talking about that at the end of the season. But yeah, my worry is now we just start seeing this as like we spoke about Long Beach last year when basically Dixon was taking out something out of his control that basically prevented him being more so in that championship fight. And I fear this is probably going to be a similar situation, albeit Dixon has had 3 now, including this, of those unfavourable results of outside the top 10, as we sort of put it. But yeah, I think most of the weekend, the biggest issue really was this just software glitch that led to the cars not being able to restart themselves and the AMR safety crew still being needed, despite the reliance on them supposedly diminishing. But it was good to see that there was kind of a swift fix for that, and that ultimately it prevented the race from ending under yellow and gave us that pretty exciting finish. I think just in terms of other notes from drivers, what have you, I think another sticking point is still sort of how big is the boost, or how useful actually is the boost at this stage. It seems to deplete quite quickly. I think actually Palou said that he expected it to last even shorter than it did. But I think one thing that was made was it does shift the balance of the cars a bit, and the concern is that actually the change in car balance negatively ultimately negates the boost that the hybrid does give. So that's kind of something to keep an eye out on, and that also push to pass is still more powerful than the hybrid technology. But I guess that's expected. And it's all at the moment just about how you tactically use the hybrid, because you can't just ignore it because it gives you a 10th or 2 a lap, is kind of what the drivers have said. But yeah, I think overall, apart from kind of ignoring the Dixon thing, it's not really had much bearing on the kind of competitive pecking order. Obviously, we had Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, the Penske duo. You had Scott Dixon, 3 of the guys who've tested the hybrid the most, not getting through to the Fast 12, while you had the likes of David Malukas, Christian Rasmussen performing very well, and they'd had much less time with the hybrid. Malukas had tested it with Arrow McLaren, but that was kind of in its infancy, and he'd missed the full field test in March when he was injured, and he's only had 1 test with Meyer Shank with the hybrid. But yeah, I think overall it all felt fairly ordinary and a fairly normal race weekend, which is it a good thing? Well, I guess it's not a bad thing. The difference isn't nothing. It's not great. It will get better over time. It's going to develop. That's what they've said. The scope for the hybrid to give over double the horsepower it's offering at the moment, which is great. But for now, it was reliability that was the priority, and unfortunately, we did have that issue with Dixon. But the drivers seem to be enjoying it. They're busier in the cockpit, maybe a bit overwhelming. I think debriefs are a bit longer. They've now got, I think it was 24 different engine maps compared to only 8 they had before, which is kind of puts into perspective how much busier they are with the hybrid now. It's kind of hard to ignore it if you chose to do that. It was good, bar the big obvious Dixon problem.
Yeah, I think that's just bound to happen as well. It's a new thing, and it's obviously been introduced midway through the season. So drivers have probably been used to kind of the car before and without being the hybrid. And then I think after a couple of races, everything will be kind of fine. They'll get used to all the balance and everything like that.
I think even the car or the drivers that hadn't done much testing, had done a lot of the testing, like Palou, he was saying he still feels like, you've got people at 70% of knowing what they're doing with it, 90%. No one's at 100% yet, even those who have done a lot of the testing. And he expects it to be something that people do continue talking about, a bit like with push to pass over time. And it was used in qualifying as well. I think that's one place where I think Palou said it kind of just become the norm. People will figure out how to use it, but always in the race, I think people are going to be using it strategically, using it differently. And yeah, now we've got ovals where I think drivers have said that it may have less of an impact. The boost you feel it less. But I think on road and street courses particularly, it is a good tool to have, even if at the moment there's not a huge difference noticeable from the outside.
I mean, obviously we touched on Dixon being out of the championship fight. It wasn't a great weekend for Will Power. He was anonymous without saying it too bluntly. I mean, we didn't really see anything of Power. He was pretty much I felt like we didn't really see anybody, because I felt like it was a sort of consistent gap. McLaughlin in third drove very well. We didn't really see much from McLaughlin really. And Penske all round. I mean, I said last week I think Newgarden still got an outside shot. I'm going to pretty confidently say that championship-wise, he's got absolutely no shot now. I mean, yet again, just another really, I don't want to say uncharacteristic mistake because they're coming up a bit too often now to be uncharacteristic, but another major mistake. Went into the pits to obviously check it out, and then he got a drive-through for a pit speed violation and a stop and go for failure to follow the direction of IndyCar, and then another drive-through for pit speed violation, all within 2 laps. So ended up 25th, continues his rather bizarre form of pretty much finishing in the top 4 or outside the top 16. And yeah, as I said last week, I thought maybe he's still got an outside shot, but he's now 143 points behind Palou. I know he got 6 overs in 8 races, but even for the king of corn country, I think that's, well, it's not a bit too much. He's going to have to hope Palou has a bit of a disaster in every race, to be frank, to hope that he's in any sort of shot of the championship.
Yeah, I'll dissect the Penske's in championship order because, I mean, it's a bit of a weird one for Power because he has obviously dropped back from Palou. I don't think that is a huge disaster at this point if we are to expect Penske to be really strong on the ovals. I think almost more significant from Power's standpoint is the fact that you had Dixon having that sort of poor weekend. So he's now got a more of a comfortable buffer back to third. I think he had a bit of an illness over the weekend, which kind of didn't help his cause. I don't know how much of an impact that actually sort of does have. But again, him and Newgarden missed out on the Fast 12, which, you know, following on from obviously Road America and the podium sweep, there's been a bit of a strange loss of pace there. It's all been pretty stark since then. So yeah, it was Power's worst road and street finish of the year. It's not awful. I think McLaughlin, it was a much better day for him. Again, with Palou obviously outperforming everyone, bar O'Ward.
Well,
further back.
O'Ward, let's not take the mickey, really.
Yeah, but looking at points wise, yeah,
looking at points wise, yeah.
McLaughlin is now over 100 points back. I mean, the fact that he was the only one to make the Fast 12, didn't quite make the Fast 6. He made a bit of an error, I think, on his final lap. But it seems kind of been a bit of a reversion back to last season's form in qualifying among the 3 Penske drivers. But I think, he had a pretty good start to the race. McLaughlin made a few places, I think, at the beginning, and then basically said he was fed up of being overcut by drivers. So he decided just to go really long and overcut a load of drivers. I think it was on the first pit stop cycle, and that got him into third. And he was kind of there all day with nothing for Palou or O'Ward, but he was much better than the drivers behind him as well. So he said he just shut the hybrid system off and just ignored it because there was no. Oh no. No, in fact, he said he was alert. He was kind of just using the time to learn about it, I think. I can't remember exactly what he said. I'll find out. McLaughlin, good day. I think that was important because he's made a few mistakes recently. So, to get that sort of result was good. And Newgarden, I mean, I don't really know what to say. It was, I think the penalties for pit speeding, I think they said there was possibly a bit of a software issue.
Glitch, yeah. But like the thing is, it's a mistake in the first place. Like, it feels in week out we're talking another Newgarden mistake, which is just so unlike him.
Well, that's the thing. He was running, I think was he running about 5th, but he had to stop again. So it was already not going to be a great day. Yeah, then he had his off-track excursion where, you didn't really see many drivers making that sort of mistake. 3 penalties, even if it was mostly out of his control, it was kind of a little bit comical. It puts him even further out of championship contention. He's down in 10th in the standings. He's now almost 40 points behind McLaughlin even. So it's going to take...
Rosenqvist,
it's going to take something close to a miracle, I think, for him to really claw his way back in.
Here's a stat for you. Santina Ferrucci's got double the top 10s this year Newgarden has.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, do we just... Ferrucci, let's just touch on him briefly. I mean, that was a good day because...
Not the good day. He keeps on having them, doesn't he?
I think we're really seeing the Penske Alliance come to the fore. And I know we touched on this in the mid-season review, but it is super impressive what he's doing, because last year their only top 10 finish was the Indy 500, and now they've made the 5 out of 9 races been in the top 5, and I think I've 4 for obviously half of the road and street races he's been in the top 5. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they can deliver on the shorter ovals now. But I mean, he actually qualified 21st, and after all of last year making a lot of the fact they were really strong on repaves for it.
No, it was hardly a repave. It was repaved 10 months ago.
Right, exactly. So yeah, he made good progress in the race, and yeah, he's got this knack now to kind of just appear in the top 10. So yeah, super impressive day. No, super impressive day.
Feels like we had a lot of like really good but anonymous days. Like Herta in 4th, didn't really see him at all after the start. Got a bit of fight in McLaughlin, ended up 4th, and I think that's actually quite quietly important for Herta, because he spoke about his good run of form. He's now got 3 top 6s in a row, which I think is quite good for Colton, to be honest.
I've got the McLaughlin quote here, by the way. Yeah, he just said, I was in no man's land, so I turned everything off and just drove home. But he did also say he did like use the race for a bit of learning, because as I said, the drivers are kind of just learning. But yeah, I think out of that sort of top 5, I think Herta sort of day again you've kind of been wanting to see from him. He's qualified 4th I think he's qualified 4th 4 times this year. And bar sort of a 3-race run, Barber through Indy, he's been in the top 4 of every qualifying session. And I think Marcus Ericsson was one of the most impressive drivers, actually. He's now got 3 successive top 10 finishes. I think he's starting to find his groove a little bit, even if he's not quite matching his teammates on a consistent basis. Obviously outperformed Kirkwood this weekend. He's still salvaged 8th after what was his 2nd worst qualifying in the season, I believe, after St. Pete, where he qualified 18th. So he's kind of continued that consistency, still sits 6th in the standings. But I think when I keep looking at the points gaps, it was a really good day for Palou, regardless of whether he finished first or second, and felt like he should have won, because
he's got a good buffer going into the ovals, which I think for him was the important thing.
If you look at Kirkwood in 6th, he's 95 points back, so that's the sort of buffer you're wanting if you're Palou. Ericsson was really good. He hadn't qualified inside the top 6 since the first 2 rounds. His best since then was, I think he qualified 9th, and I can't remember where that was. I didn't note it down. But
Ericsson 2.0 is clearly working, because he's got 4 top 10s in a row since Ericsson 2.0 started. So yeah. But
other than qualifying 9th and then inside the fast 6 the first 2 rounds, and now Mid Ohio, I think he qualified 15th or lower in every race. He's still not got a pole. I think it does show a bit of a return to form this for Ericsson.
And then it was Alexander Rossi, ironically ahead of Christian Lundgaard, which we'll get onto a bit later. Rossi's sort of having these days where he's coming home top 10 week in, week out quite consistently. We didn't really see much of Rossi, but it was quite a good performance into the day. Lundgaard, similarly, we've been speaking about how he's been a bit too messy. He's a better result since the Indy GP. So that was quite a good result for Lundgaard. Obviously mentioned Kirkwood and Nate. So a nice little mix there. This is probably a good time to touch on. Should we do the news?
Given they finished next to each other.
Yeah, go on.
Let's go for it.
Might as well.
I mean, yeah, we were in the news. Alexander Rossi will leave McLaren in 2024 to replaced by Christian Lundgaard. It's the endless store of McLaren drivers seemingly at the minute. I mean, hopefully we won't have any more driver announcements from Arrow McLaren for hopefully over a year. Let's hope. But it seems like it's not like a Pourchaire incident or a Malukas incident. It's obviously quite clear that Rossi couldn't agree to terms with McLaren. He wanted a multi-year deal. McLaren didn't quite have that faith in him for whatever reason. I think it's a shame. I think Rossi is a good team leader. I think he's someone who, he's an Indy 500 winner. He's been a long-time championship contender. He gives that experience. He knows what he's doing. And he's obviously had a real upturn in form this year, which is obviously, you can't deny that. On the other side, Lundgaard's a very exciting prospect. Is obviously quite clearly showing himself as one of IndyCar's top prospects for several years. And McLaren have been long linked to him, and I'm sure he'll be very good at McLaren. It's just, And the obviously short-term issue is you sort of lack a figurehead, maybe O'Ward is starting to step into that role, but you sort of want that experienced-wise head that Rossi brought to the team in many ways. And obviously McLaren set themselves up for longer term, but it's an experience of longer term performance versus short-term stability. So it's not like a Pourchaire situation. Absolutely, it's like, what on earth are you doing? It obviously, like, things didn't work out. These things don't work out. But Lundgaard, of the free driver market, he was the only one which realistically made sense.
Yeah, I think foremost, I'll use the same word that you did. It's kind of just a shame for Rossi. I think he's beaten O'Ward 4 times this season, which is impressive. It feels like he's really kind of started to find his feet, find some consistent performance at Arrow McLaren. But yeah, there was an offer there. That's where there's kind of a difference to the other sagas we've maybe seen, where it's a bit unceremonious, what have you. But yeah, ultimately they couldn't agree terms. I think there was a suggestion that Rossi was maybe only offered 1 year, which I guess is a bit of a weird one because he's not old. He's only in his early 30s. But yeah,
Dixon is 10 years older and is still winning races.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, sadly for him, any team now is probably a downwards step performance-wise. I think the RLL vacancy is interesting. The Premier opportunity is also interesting if he wants to really kind of guide that up. I think somewhere like Foyt would be interesting, seeing what they've got with the Penske alliance now. Rossi's obviously now going to be the most sought after free agent out there. You would imagine, at least, unless a team really wants a proper young gun. Lundgaard's side, it's just a really deserved chance at a bigger team, and ultimately I think RLL haven't made the step forward that Lundgaard maybe hoped. Because at the end of the day, this is the team that kind of bred him up in IndyCar, gave him that home, and if he could have made it work even longer term, I guess he probably would have done. I think for him, it kind of feels like the right time to move on, even if kind of offering Rossi a 1 year deal and him sort of exiting feels harsh. But yeah, no hard feelings, evidently. I think Rossi as well won't want a 1 year deal. He'll want kind of that stability longer term. Which I guess is why he's kind of accepts the decision, even if, it's got to be disappointing that they've spoken so much about the long term, yet still just only offer a 1 year deal, keep on kind of just chopping and changing. They just need continuity, need stability, which they've just not got as much as they've said they've been targeting it. But I think they are finding that now. It's a multi-year deal, like has been the case with Nolan Siegel, like I imagine is the case with Pato O'Ward. There is a bit of a concern. It's a very young lineup. Do you need that experienced head like Rossi if you're looking for that long-term project? Maybe. I think Gavin Ward noted in the release that it's paid off with Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and F1 for McLaren. So we'll see. I'm still not convinced this is necessarily what a properly stable lineup looks like, just because of that inexperience to a degree, but I think just the general youth of it. I think the whole thing is just a double-edged sword, really. Great for Lundgaard, pretty sad for Rossi, really. I think hopefully this is the end of the uncertainty that seems to have reigned at McLaren, and they can really start to kick on now, because I think they have been held back by constantly chopping and changing. I think recruiting Rossi, who'd been at Andretti for six years or so, I think he'd hoped probably that this was going to be a similar thing to that. It just says a lot, doesn't it? A few weeks ago, we thought their long-term lineup would probably be O'Ward, Rossi, and Pourchaire, and now 2 of those drivers are out of the door. And just quickly, RLL as well. They're probably not going to be short of options whether they go for Rossi. They really like Yuri Vips, obviously, off his few performances last year. He's been around with the team. Malukas, but I imagine Meyer Shank will probably keep hold of him. Rinus VK might be looking for the exit door at ECR now. Pourchaire's out there as well. It is a fairly top seat, even if not the caliber of McLaren, even if they have won. Well, they had won more recently than McLaren at the time of the announcement, that is. It's more uncertainty. Well, it hopefully ends the uncertainty. Let's put it that way.
I don't really have anything to add that you guys haven't said. Like I said, it's a shame kind of just for Rossi. I kind of thought with how kind of consistent he was being, I thought he'd be he'd carry on. But if he can't agree to their terms, then it's nothing that they can really do. It's not like it ended sour or anything like that. And happy for Lundgaard. I think we predicted he might have gone like last year or something, one of our predictions, and I think it's happened now, so it's a good thing for him.
Do we think this is the right call?
It's hard to say if you can't agree terms, isn't it? Like, I think if they obviously had the intention of re-signing Rossi, which probably tells you quite a lot of McLaren's intentions, that they thought he was the right fit. But Rossi wants security, which is understandable. So I look, if I'm Gavin Ward, I'll probably try a bit more to keep Rossi on a multi-year deal. I think it's hard to say. Well, you can't replace Siegel with Lundgaard already, but yeah, it's. I feel you need that experienced head for that stability. But it's hard to say you can't agree terms. Yeah,
that's exactly what I would have said, to be honest. That I would have offered Rossi a multi-year deal, sort of shown you faith in him, because ultimately I think along the run, Rossi and Lundgaard pretty similar in terms of caliber of IndyCar driver. It will probably be proven. I think Lundgaard's, we've obviously seen what he can deliver in a kind of inconsistent RLL team. So yeah, I probably would have offered Rossi that multi-year contract, but yeah, I think I ultimately you would then be sticking with a driver of a similar caliber rather than chopping and changing again. But I think it'll work out with Lundgaard anyway in the long run.
Let's finish off the running order. I think P9, again, got to give a little mention to Christian Rasmussen. The season's best P8 in qualifying is at P9. And we spoke about last week how maybe the season has been a tad disappointing. And he is running out of time. But this performance, you feel like almost could be the one which does secure a seat for another future. He's only got 2 races left this year. It's kind of crazy to say, but a 9th place finish I feel is very important. Comfortably his best performance of the year, and it's his next best on the road and street was 13th last time out in Laguna, but before then it was 19th in St. Petersburg. So it feels a very monumental result, and one which probably could change the course of his IndyCar career in many aspects. So good effort by Christian Rasmussen.
Yeah, if he's kind of matched / even outperformed Rinus VeeKay a few times this year, even if there's not loads of superb results to show for it. He's in a different group in qualifying, which always has to kind of be considered, but he still made the fast 12, and yeah, generally just had more pace than VeeKay. It's his first fast 12, and sometimes you see drivers who haven't made it to that late stage before they'll kind of struggle when they get into the fast 12. But no, he was even a factor in that session. He was 9th in the end. Started even one place higher, I assume, because Marcus Armstrong had an engine penalty.
I think it was a 6th place penalty. 6.
Yeah, so as Rasmussen started in 8th in the end, and I really like the way he drives. He's very aggressive. He's kind of a good model for an IndyCar driver, I would say, and yeah, ultimately he's kind of impressing in what is the nick of time. He's dragged the 20 car a little further clear of the leader's circle buffer, let's say, and he was kind of just running top 10 all race, and his previous best finish was 12th in the 500. Road and street course wise, it was 13th at Laguna Seca. So that was the last race before Mid-Ohio, obviously. Upward trajectory we're seeing. I think otherwise his best was 19th in St. Pete, and he'd finished in the 20s. So I think we're seeing improvement at the right time.
He was ahead of Santino Friction. You mentioned them, Will Power, David Malukas. It's a bit of a shame, It's like Laguna, really good performance, qualified 3rd, really heroically, was running 3rd comfortably, and then just unfortunately just stalled in his pits, and that was pretty much day done from there. Still came home and very respectable with P12 as well, that car back into the leader circle, so you can't really moan too much. But just a shame. As we said last week, it's more about the performances than about the actual results. So Lucas will be happy, and he's clearly proven that he is still a top-class IndyCar talent.
It was a phenomenal performance, really. I mean, he quite comprehensively outqualified Rosenqvist, who, as we know, has been super impressive in qualifying this year. So it's successive fast 12 appearances on his return, then putting it 3rd. This is his best qualifying as an IndyCar driver. So, yeah, I mean, MSR clearly is an environment drivers enjoy and find it pretty easy to adapt to. And yeah, it was a pretty astonishing performance, to be honest. I didn't expect anything near to this. I was thinking if he was qualifying inside the top 20, it would be good in these first few races back. But now he's been out of the car yet he's for so long, and he's just got straight back on the horse, back into his groove. And I think there was a report from the race of a month or so ago saying that Palou's legal documents had basically described Malukas as not a top tier driver or not a sort of A-class driver. I think he's proven some points here. He seems pretty elite to me. And this is still with a wrist that's a little bit handicapped. It's still only at about 80% on one of the most physical tracks. One of the most physical tracks, regardless of the recent repave as well. So, performance was there. He was, running up there in the top 3, looked bound for top 5 until I think he said there was a possible clutch issue that led to the stall in the pits. But regardless of that, he still beat Rosenqvist, who did admittedly drop further down. I think he started down in 19th because of an engine penalty too. But we're seeing the potential, aren't we? And he's top. He's really good, clearly, still.
It's just a shame because of what could have been. Because, like you said, the stall in the pits, and I think when he just came out, we just got caught up kind of behind everyone, and it was only about like 5 or 6 seconds, not that much. But when you think about it in terms of the race and where he ended up, it kind of like ruined his race in a sense. But yeah, it is really good, the result that he has got. And I think he's wearing his, like, is it a brace that he has on his wrist? He's still kind of wearing that. And I said, to be still not up to 100% and be getting that result is really good. And I think once it's healed, I think maybe he'd be getting even better results and actually getting the consistency in the races.
I think the probably final driver we'll touch on is Toby Sowery in 13th. Said last week's making his IndyCar debut. He hasn't tested in over a year. It's his first time in the hybrid. And he's wheeled the car with many names, the 51 Dale Coyne racing car, to very, very impressive. 13th place, I know on the page, but 13th place is last, not that good. But I mean, you've got to take it for what it is. I mean, for a guy making his IndyCar debut, he's never driven the hybrid, whilst everyone else hasn't driven IndyCar in over a year. To come home 13th, which is Coyne's joint best result of the season, is there's no other word for it. Impressive. I mean, great effort by Toby Sowery on debut. I mean, that car's next best result was 18th in Detroit when Vautier randomly ended up in the podium positions. We were saying Vautier was the best of that car. I think Sowery probably trumped that quite comfortably. So very, very respectful to Toby Sowery. I think the other notable thing is that car's actually ahead of the 18 in the Leader Circle. I know Jack Carvey had some medical issues this weekend, so we can't really fairly take that into account on this weekend alone. But you got to start asking questions about Jack Carvey if he's behind the Leader Circle to a car that is being quite literally chopped and changed week in, week out.
Yeah, that actually shocks me because I felt like Harvey's been doing not a bad job in a team that obviously came into the season with so much uncertainty. This weekend he was having all sorts of issues with neck pain, back spasms. So that was a bit of a setback. I think he spent some time with the IndyCar medical team. He said on Twitter, I think he also had a clutch problem that led to a stall in the pits and a long stop. So the race for him was a disaster. I mean, he finished 26th behind Newgarden, and we spoke about what a disaster that was for him. But yeah, I think it wouldn't be an understatement to say that Toby Sowery probably delivered one of the drives of the season, not just for that car where it was the best drive of the season by a landslide, but I think one of the best performances from any driver this season to come in with, I think, one prior IndyCar test with RLL last year. Again, it wasn't as short notice as we've seen from some, but he had next to no preparation. He hadn't driven the hybrid yet, but immediately in practice, he was quicker than Harvey. Again, there's a bit of a caveat there, but he was, in the combined practice charts ahead of a few drivers. He had an issue in qualifying, which prevented him from setting basically I think he had one lap at the very end, which was not reflective of his true pace because of that issue. But yeah, one previous test, jumps in for his debut in this completely new situation, still adapts rapidly, learnt the ropes of the hybrid evidently, and levelled the best finish for the team, full stop, with the 18 car with Harvey, finished 13th once. So, yeah, I mean, I think he was on the two-stop strategy, Sowery, when some cars attempted the three-stopper. Saw the likes of Linus Lundqvist, Marcus Armstrong, both of whom made it into the Fast 12, but ultimately were on the wrong strategy. Sowery, though, had the pace to really execute that two-stop and finished within a second of Malukas and ahead of some pretty esteemed names there. So he's waited a long time for his chance and seized it as nobody else really has in that entry. So phenomenal. Really, really super, super impressive drive.
Just so people know, Hunter McElway was testing the car on a day that we speak. So early rumours is that he might be in the car for the rest of the year. On some point this year. Sorry, I don't know what's coming out of there. At some point this year, Hunter McElway will probably be in that car. Just to run through the rest of the running order. It was Rossi, Lundqvist actually qualified quite well, qualified for fast 12, so that weird run was over. Rob, who had a joint season's best in 16th. Armstrong, Rahal, VK Siegel, Simpson, Canapino, who ran out of fuel at the end. Grosjean, who hit the wall at the end. Fittipaldi, Newgarden, Harvey, and Dixon. Unsung hero of the weekend. I feel like a lot of these will go to Toby Sowery, so I'll wait until you say yours, and then I'll pick mine depending on what you say. I think we'll keep it different.
Well,
is Toby Sowery becoming so good he's now not unsung?
Yeah, has it been sung too much? Should we just say the non-Toby Sowery unsung hero? So we've
Toby
got
Sowery collectively wins. I'll go for Ericsson. I think he had quite a good day, but it was one of the old Ericsson Ganassi days, which I feel like he needed. So I'll go for Ericsson.
I might go with Christian Rasmussen. I feel like he had a good kind of race. He had a few kind of like battles and stuff, so I feel like it was a good race.
Yeah, I'll go for Ferrucci then probably, or Herta to be fair, because I think he didn't get much coverage, and that's another really solid day. So one of those two.
Funny moments? Anything? I can't think of anything to be honest.
Apart from the intermediate Theo Pourchaire tyres, which was actually at Silverstone and not at Mid Ohio.
And nobody apart from you will really notice.
I didn't even see it either, so I didn't notice.
I think James Hinchcliffe saying he was going to be driving the 66 Meyer Shank car in a tweet with in brackets 1 out of 2, and I saw the first tweet that opened it and didn't have enough signal to see the second tweet, so I had absolutely no idea what was going on and thought that Malukas had a setback with his wrist and was actually not going to be driving, but ultimately he was just getting a test of the hybrid with 5 laps or so to broaden his knowledge for the broadcast.
Yeah, that takes it. Right. Podium predictor tournament, just so the viewers are aware. It wasn't very interesting this week, I'll be completely honest, but I'll let you know anyway. I predicted Palou, Dixon, Herta, so I got 2. Archie predicted Palou, Herta, McLaughlin, so you get 2. Ellie predicted Power, Palou, O'Ward, so you actually get 3. Josh Mason predicted Power, O'Ward, Newgarden, so he gets 2. Fawn and Watershop predicted Palou, Power, Dixon, so they get 2. Tom Gamel predicted Palou, McLaughlin, Rossi, he gets 2. The IndyCar writers predicted Palou, Dixon, McLaughlin, and the fans, you didn't enter this week, so you got absolutely no points. So fans, if you're listening, get involved for Iowa next week, because otherwise you won't get any points. Fastest predicted tournament. Does anyone actually know the scores? I feel like it was 21-20 or something, I think. We're gonna have to check. We're gonna have to verify this at some point. We'll try and verify this at some point before Iowa. Anyway, for this week, I predicted Herta, which was right, Palou, which was right, Newgarden, which certainly wasn't right, Dixon, which wasn't right, O'Ward, and Kirkwood. So I ended up with 3. Archie predicted Palou and Herta correctly, as well as O'Ward. So you get 3 correct as well. And then Ellie, you predicted Herta, O'Ward, McLaughlin, and Palou. So you actually got 4 right. So I believe it's 25, 24, 23 currently. So still very close. How are we going to do Iowa? Are we just going to predict the fast 6 for each race? Or are we just going to... Obviously the fast 6 doesn't exist, so what are we doing?
Should we do, or do we do just 1 and 1 to cover both? No, let's do 1 for each.
1 for each? Oh,
1 for what?
Bold.
Oh.
1 for each.
No, actually, yeah. Let's just do 1. Let's just do 1 overall.
Cool. Right, we'll do 1 overall, and we'll get back to you in just a minute. Right. So this, I presume you've got all 3 Penske's. It's just what order are we putting them in? Power seems to get pole here every year, so I put Power pole, followed by Newgarden and McLaughlin.
Are we ordering it?
Well, no,
I didn't realise
but
it was
that's my
alternate.
vibe.
Okay,
That's
well, I'll give an order. I'm going to go for Power, Newgarden, McLaughlin too.
Same as me. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all got 3 Penske's. We've all gone Dixon.
Yeah.
I've not actually gone.
We've
Dixon.
not. Oh,
No.
wow.
Oh.
Here was me off camera saying, "Oh, I reckon we might all have similar."
Mhm.
You
No,
got
I've not gone
O'Ward?
for Dixon. I went for
Yeah.
O'Ward. Yes.
I went for Herta.
I also went for Herta because he was quickest in the test recently.
I just put Kirkwood. Oh,
Who's your other one then? Palou, sorry.
No, it's Rossi. I put Rossi. So
Oh, you got Rossi. Interesting. Who's your 6th, Ellie? Have you got 6 from you?
I think I've said it, but McLaughlin, Award, Power, Dixon, Kirkwood, and Newgarden.
Cool. There you are. I mean, we'll have one combined for both races, but it'll be double points. So it's all on the line. It's all on the line at Iowa with epic race names of Post Malone and Luke Combs and all the Iowa festivities.
it's going to be great. I really hope.
They have Ed Sheeran instead of. Well, it's not this year, but
I really sincerely hope. I mean, I think Friday kicks off actually with a high line practice to try and just get that second lane, just rub it in a little bit, because obviously, as we covered, the recent test only had basically one lane open and there wasn't much tyre degradation. So I think they are working hard to kind of sort that out, because it's usually a beautiful festive chaos, as I think I put it. So I really hope it stays that way and it isn't just difficult to pass, little tyre drop off sort of race as some predicted after the test. So yeah, here's hoping, because if it's as it usually is, it's almost always arguably the best non-Indy 500 weekend of the year.
let's have a very brief look at the championship archer. I remember you saying last week that O'Ward wouldn't win a race. He quickly decided to prove you very much wrong. That's going end of year review as a bad prediction. I think I hate to break it to you. Is O'Ward in the fight?
I think he's probably still an outsider personally, but I don't think it's impossible. Now,
is Dixon an outsider now?
I think I would still just put Dixon less of an outsider than O'Ward. I think I trust Dixon more than O'Ward, which is natural, because I mean he's been doing this for a lot longer than O'Ward has. I just don't quite know whether O'Ward will be able to sustain sort of consistently. However, overall performance wise, I would be more confident in O'Ward. So yeah, it's tough to say, because obviously we spoke about being kind of that runaway 3, but now it very much seems less like that, and all the more condensed now, because you've got Palou 48 clear of Power, and then Power's kind of right slap bang slightly further back from the middle, but pretty much in the middle of.
I think Newgarden and McLaughlin are definitely out of it now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think McLaughlin's an impossibility. I think
I can't see him gaining 100 points in Palou in 8 races.
No, I think it's a stretch. It would take a disaster for Palou, well, not only for Palou but those in front as well. I think I still put Power as my favourite. I think just him being there, he's obviously going to have very similar pace to Newgarden and McLaughlin. So yeah, I think it's between Palou and Power. I thought it was between Palou and Power anyway. I think O'Ward, I would almost say I'm more confident he'll finish 3rd now than Dixon, but weirdly, I'd be more confident that Dixon would win the title than I would O'Ward, which doesn't make any sense. But
I've been saying this for weeks. A lot rise in Iowa. A lot's going to be dependent on Iowa. O'Ward's very good there. It isn't quite Dixon's best track on the schedule. And yeah, damage limitation for Palou really this weekend, isn't it? Can he, if the gap comes down to 10, if it comes down to 20, if you get O'Ward and Dixon within 30, it's not going to be easy. I mean, obviously he's very good at Portland. Toronto isn't his best track. Time will tell. It's going to be a big weekend.
A couple of disaster races for Power and Palou this weekend, and it is wide open. But I think what I mean by the O'Ward Dixon thing, I think if it came down to a championship fight, I just think Dixon's better equipped for that. if they're not in the championship fight, then there's every chance that O'Ward
It felt like O'Ward did need to win mid or higher though to be in. Like we didn't expect him to gain a win in the street course. Oh, I should say road course. Sorry. His strong suit is ovals, particularly short ones. So you never quite know. Newgarden could quite disrupt the championship fights here because he's not in it. He could cause problems.
Take the Newgarden McLaughlin are right there to take points off people. So, yeah, it's enticing. This is a huge weekend coming up, a really huge weekend for the championship. And coming out of Iowa, I think we will have a much clearer picture of who's in the fight because all of a sudden you go from 8 races left to only having 6.
Yeah, and so maybe an extra championship contender game this weekend. We'll find out. I mean, next week I've got no idea where I'll be this time next week. Your viewers will pick me up somewhere. You'll find out where at the time. We've got no idea.
I think one guarantee we'll be pretty tired because the races, one of them is at 1 a.m. UK time. The other, I think, starts about 18 hours later than the other one started. So it's going to be pretty tiring for us and for the drivers, obviously, as well.
Anyway, we'll try our best. But we hope you enjoyed Mid-Ohio. I mean, I certainly enjoyed Mid-Ohio. Here's to more episodes like that. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. If you do enjoy the podcast, obviously please rate us, please comment your thoughts, and obviously give us any feedback. That'd be greatly appreciated. But big weekend next time at Iowa. We're certainly looking forward to it. I hope you are. See you.